Welcome back. I'm Austin Westfall. Let's do some international news. This is a live look at Jerusalem, where we've got a very tight eye on the Middle East right now. The U.S. military will deploy additional fighter jets and Navy warships to the Middle East, the Pentagon said on Friday, as Washington seeks to bolster defenses following threats from Iran and its allies, Hamas and Hezbollah. We do want to bring in Behnam Ben Taleblu. He's a senior fellow with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. As always, Behnam, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining. What specifically has Iran said about their next steps?
Well, it's great to be with you again. It looks like we're back to the future in a sense. It's the Islamic Republic making much of the same posturing that we heard between April 1 and April 13 when it was threatening to overtly and directly strike Israeli territory. Now that that has happened back in April, we know this is not just an intellectual exercise. This is the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, which has previously threatened to annihilate the Jewish state and is currently trying to seek nuclear weapons, or currently trying to hedge towards at least a nuclear threshold capability. Now feels emboldened enough to try to respond to the killing of Ismail Haniyeh on its own territory with an overt and direct attack against the Jewish state, but potentially with proxies this time. So you've had semi-official media, hardline Iranian newspapers talk about Israel having to anticipate a launch far greater than that which the regime flexed back in April. And back in April, the regime fired over 300 projectiles, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. And likely it's going to try to seek to bolster the lethality of that, perhaps not the quantity, and then layer on more proxy multi-directional attacks as well. And this is what the U.S. Was instrumental in helping guard against back in April through an integrated air and missile defense architecture, as well as working by, with, and through the Israelis, the Arabs, and even European partners who participated in that defense. So Iran has the region on razor's edge again.
We were, of course, following the situation back in April closely as well. That was a retaliatory attack as well. Those missiles were either intercepted or they simply didn't make it all the way to Israel. It may very well have been designed to fail in order to prevent further escalation. From your perspective, Behnam, does it feel like something similar could happen this time around? Or like you said, do we expect something more substantive this time around?
I expect something much more lethal this time around. You know, the quality versus quantity of that can depend on what is fired from Iranian territory versus that which its proxies choose to fire, as well as how integrated this is. But just a note on the April attack, I liken that to a state pressing the gas and the brakes at the same time. It had about 12 days and highly telegraphed its attack. That didn't mean it didn't want to kill. I think it certainly wanted to kill. I think it certainly wanted to cause damage. But ultimately, it tried to put a bit of a cap on that diplomatically and politically as well. This time, I do think the gloves are off. And even there's reports, unconfirmed, I should say, nonetheless circulating that the regime is rejecting offers of mediation.
You know, you brought up that this is all pretty much coming in light of Ismail Haniyeh being killed in Tehran. You follow this so closely ever since October 7th that we've seen a number of attacks from Iran and from proxies specifically. Have we picked up on any patterns on what type of day, what time of day they usually tend to do these types of attacks?
Well, on the attacks that are from Iranian territory, again, there's only been one very direct one against the Israeli state, and that was 12 days from the incident. So it was 12 days from April 1st, so it was April 13th. If one counts 12 days from July 31st, you get to August 12 or August 13. There is a Jerusalem Post report quoting a Sky News Arabia report that is alleging that actually Iran intends to hold it on that day because that day is actually a Jewish holy day for mourning. So it may intend to magnify any kind of psychological effects, much like Hamas intended to magnify the psychological effects on October 7th when it attacked, which was again on a Jewish holy day, a day of atonement, as well as 50 years from this October, the Yom Kippur War took place on Yom Kippur. So for a direct attack, there is not much other than this trend line. We may not be able to associate much with it. But if you look at the proxies, those guys, it's not about rhyme or reason. It's about deterrence. And it's about 173 times or 172 times they've attacked U.S. forces in the region, and we've only responded militarily anywhere from 9 to 11. And as long as this ratio continues to be lopsided, it won't matter what time of day or night or season it is. Attacks will continue.
When we talk about an eventual attack, nobody has a crystal ball, but there's been some loosely reported what people might assume this attack could happen within the coming days. Do we have any reliable information to say that this will happen soon, or do we have anything that might say this could happen perhaps later on?
Nothing reliable on the exact timeline other than that, allegation that I had mentioned, which had come from two separate media sources without any clear attribution of where they got that information from. But I think that the question is basically settled, at least in the analytical community, which is that it's more of a question of when and not if there'll be an overt kinetic attack. And this points to a major deterrence failure because it would mean the Islamic Republic is not afraid. It's a shadow warfighter, but it's not afraid of coming out of the shadows and directly striking Israel, a nuclear power, which is backstopped by the U.S., which is also a nuclear power. So it gets to a lot of the deterrence failures that have been underwriting much of the instability and risk taking that we've seen basically spiral across the region since October 7th.
I've been watching social media so closely all day just to see if we were seeing any activity picking up. We did see some activity from one of Iran's proxies. We saw some back and forth between Israel and Hezbollah today. What happened?
Even up to 40 hours before, there was a bunch of rocket attacks, some of which were even headed as far north, but as far south from the Hezbollah controlled territory, which they were supposed to evacuate south of Litani River in Lebanon. Rocket attacks towards Haifa, even. Most of which were intercepted, some have fallen. Some of those rockets fell astray. But this is part of a larger boom and bust cycle of violence. There's also reports about Israel being able to wrap up another, obviously much lesser Hamas leader. But this is part of the cycle of violence that the Islamic Republic is feeding in this 10-month-long war now, to be able to kind of have a psychological effect to game its adversary before something major and kinetic and overt comes.
What preparations is Israel making? What preparations are some Western states making in anticipation of a possible attack?
Based on reporting, the United States is really in full court press here because it realized, as well as the Israelis realized, that the U.S. integrative role in the Middle East was essential for really linking up these different air and missile defense capabilities of the Israelis, of the Arabs, and even of the Europeans who had some things in theater there. So ultimately, the U.S. was much more of a force multiplier. And if that force multiplier was able to block the vast majority of those drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles and intercept them and prevent them from landing on Israeli territory, or better yet, striking strategic targets, which the regime claimed it was going to be striking, then it's going to have to be doing a heck of a lot more of that, given that the regime is really intent now on pushing away from the mediation table, even pushing away from some potential telegraphing, and indeed try to strike harder or more creatively or in a qualitatively different fashion. So the U.S. is going to have to really double down here. There's already reports about more military assets into the region. Someone like me would say that it's not just about deterrence by denial. It's not just about making sure that these projectiles fail. It's about making sure we have the right force presence and posture in the region to make sure that if needed, we can do deterrence by punishment, that we can threaten the regime from launching in the first place, or threaten them to know that they would lose something far greater than just the projectile they fire. That's the way you restore deterrence, in my view, in the region.
Remind me, what avenues does Iran have to strike Israel directly? I think of Iran itself, which, as you mentioned, that's only happened once. But there's Hamas, there's Hezbollah, there's the Houthis. What else?
So the regime has created, using what they call the axis of resistance. That's basically the constellation of terror and proxy forces throughout the Middle East. You have Lebanon, and you have Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have the Houthis in Yemen. You have the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. You have the Assad regime in Syria, and then you have the patron, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And each of these different groups has a different capability: rockets, mortars, IRAMs, drones, anti-tank guided weapons, things of that nature, different flight profile, different time to get to the target, a different type of target that they would be hitting. And really, it's about integrating it. And this is what analysts call really the ring of fire that would force technologically superior adversaries like the Israelis, who have a very good layered air and missile defense system, to have to choose between munitions and may perhaps track all of the munitions, but not be able to intercept all of the munitions. And this is really a kind of firepower now we're seeing in the region that proves that sometimes quantity can have a quality of its own.
There's so much discussion about the might of the Iron Dome above Israel, protecting Israel. We saw it in action today from those strikes from Hezbollah, but we also saw an example where a Houthi strike actually made its way straight through the Iron Dome and hit a building in Tel Aviv proper. Are there concerns about the might and the capabilities of the Iron Dome at this point?
Well, in that one reported instance, there was a fair bit of creativity employed by the Houthis, but that creativity signaled a vulnerability for the Israelis to have to rush and double down on. And that was that this modified Iranian drone provided to the Houthis. It was a Samad 3 drone. The Houthis have updated the engine, likely with Iranian help. It's dubbed the Jaffa now. That's the Arabic way you say the city Jaffa, which is technically connected now to the larger metropolitan area of Tel Aviv. And based on the flight profile, it went about 2,600 kilometers, and it attacked Israel from the west. So it went over the Red Sea, through the Sinai, past, and then made a right from the Mediterranean, hooking in through a beach and hitting a residential center in Tel Aviv. And based on press reporting, again, the Israelis were looking north to deter Hezbollah. They were looking south to make sure they had their eyes on Gaza, particularly with Hamas there, and then obviously looking east to make sure they could deter any of the rising Iraqi-based Shia militia attacks. And that's what exposed them on the western flank. I think they understand that now. You're likely going to have more resources, particularly in terms of human capital and technical capital and eyes on the problem, to make sure that they're covered 360 degrees. Because lest we forget, some of those same Iranian hardline sources are saying that they're looking to take advantage of penetrating Israel from anywhere within that 360-degree bubble.
Behnam, as always, we appreciate your time and analysis. Take care. We're watching it closely.
Thank you.
Let's take a commercial break. We'll be right back with more on the Middle East in 2 minutes.